Welcome to another deep dive with us.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be looking at excerpts from a book
Okay.
called The Lacuna, Curating Centuries of Knowledge. And it's going to be all about this idea of an underground stream of
Interesting.
knowledge.
I like that.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So it's like this idea that there's a hidden current of wisdom and it's flowing beneath the surface of like mainstream history and culture, you know?
Huh. Okay, so it's like a secret knowledge almost.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Like a hidden lineage of esoteric wisdom that's been passed down for centuries. And sometimes it surfaces, in different times and places.
Okay, and so what's the goal of this deep dive?
Well, we're going to try to kind of explore this idea of this underground stream.
Right.
See how it's presented in the book. See if it holds water,
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay, so one of the first things that struck me about the book
Yeah.
was how much it uses this metaphor of water.
Right.
Like right away, it talks about Michael Sellis, this 11th century scholar, who's described as like cleansing obstructed wells to extract forgotten wisdom.
Oh, wow. That's a really vivid image.
It is, right.
Yeah, and it fits so well with this idea of like a hidden stream.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, like, what are those obstructions, right?
Yeah, what's blocking the flow of that knowledge?
Is it like deliberate suppression, or is it just the natural process of forgetting and rediscovering,
Right, like those wells get clogged up over time.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then somebody comes along and cleans them out, and all that wisdom comes flowing back.
So are we saying there's like a whole bunch of knowledge that's just waiting to be rediscovered?
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. And the source material actually quotes this really beautiful Rilke poem.
Rilke? Oh, I like Rilke.
Yeah, and in this poem, it talks about like the deep parts of life pouring onward as if the river shores were opening out.
Wow. Yeah, it's like he's describing this hidden current that's always there even if we don't see it.
Exactly like a river flowing beneath the surface.
So how do we even know this underground stream exists? I mean, is it just a poetic idea or is there actual evidence of it?
Well, that's what's so interesting about the book is that the author doesn't just present this as like a metaphor. She actually gives us some specific historical examples of when this stream seems to have like burst forth into the open,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay, give me an example.
So one example is Elaine Pagel's work on Gnosticism.
Gnosticism. Okay, yeah.
She describes Gnostic ideas as like a suppressed current that keeps reappearing throughout history.
So it's like it was never truly extinguished, it just went underground.
Exactly. It's like it was hiding, waiting for the right moment to resurface.
So it's not just a passive thing, then, this stream. It's like it has its own agency in a way.
Right. And it's not just Gnosticism either.
Yeah.
The source material also mentions Carl Jung's wife,
Mm.
and she noticed a similar pattern with Grail literature.
Oh, the Grail, yeah.
Yeah, there was this sudden surge of stories and legends about the Grail in the late 12th and early 13th centuries.
And where did that come from all of a sudden?
Well, that's the mystery, isn't it? It's like this underground stream was flowing along, and then all of a sudden it bubbled up to the surface in the form of these Grail stories.
So are we talking about like a literal stream of water here, or is this all metaphorical?
Oh, it's definitely metaphorical, but it's interesting how the author uses these real-world examples to illustrate the concept.
Right, so it's like these stories and traditions are the ripples on the surface of this deeper current.
Exactly, and those
Yeah.
ripples can have a huge impact on culture and thought.
Okay, so we have this underground stream. It's flowing beneath the surface. Sometimes it emerges, sometimes it stays hidden. But who's in control of it all?
That's a great question, and it's one that the source material starts to explore with this idea of guardians of the stream.
Guardians of the Stream, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah, like who are these guardians and what's their role?
Are we talking about like actual people, or is this more of a symbolic idea?
Well, the author gives us a few examples from different traditions, and one of them is the Nagas from Hindu and Buddhist mythology.
The Nagas, those serpent-like beings.
Right, exactly, and they're often associated with water, and guess what? They're also seen as guardians of hidden knowledge.
Oh, wow. So they're like the protectors of the underground stream, making sure that its wisdom is only revealed to those who are worthy or prepared.
Yeah, that's a fascinating interpretation, and it raises all sorts of questions about who determines worthiness and what those tests of preparation might entail.
It's like those ancient initiation rituals that were part of so many mystery schools and secret societies.
Right, like you have to prove yourself before you're allowed to access this hidden knowledge.
So is this all about like protecting knowledge from those who might misuse it?
That's one possibility, and the source material even goes further, hinting at the possibility of a hidden directorate that might be influencing human affairs from the shadows.
Wait, a hidden director. Are we talking about some kind of secret society pulling the strings of history?
Well, it's certainly a provocative idea, and the author doesn't shy away from the potential implications.
So are they good or bad, these hidden directors?
That's a question we'll have to keep exploring, but it's clear that the author is suggesting that there's more to history than meets the eye.
This is getting really interesting. I'm hooked.
Me too, and we're just getting started.
So we were talking about this hidden stream of knowledge and the Guardians.
Right, the Nagas and all that.
Yeah, and one thing that I keep thinking about is like all this water imagery,
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's like the whole book is drenched in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
From Michael Sellis and his wells to the Riley poem with the river.
Yeah, and even those Nagas, they're like water serpents, right? Living in the depths.
It's true. And it's not just like a random literary device either.
Yeah.
Right? Water is like the perfect symbol for this concept.
How so?
Well, think about it. Water is fluid.
Yeah.
It's adaptable. It can carve through rock. It can flow beneath the surface.
Right. It's like it's always moving, always changing.
Exactly. And just like water, this underground stream of knowledge is hidden, but it's still powerful. It's still shaping the world around us.
Okay. I'm with you. So how does this stream actually like manifest in history?
Yeah.
How do we see it influencing culture and thought?
Well, the source material talks about these moments of what the author calls resurgences, like times when these hidden ideas burst forth and really impact the course of history.
Okay, so give me an example.
One example is the Renaissance.
The Renaissance. Okay. Yeah.
Kathleen Raine, the scholar we talked about earlier, she argued that like the whole flourishing of art and learning during the Renaissance was fueled by this rediscovery of Platonic and Neoplatonic ideas.
Oh, wow. So like all that beauty and creativity, it was like a direct result of this underground stream bubbling up to the surface.
That's the idea. And it wasn't just like a vague influence either. You can see specific connections like in the works of artists like Botticelli.
Right, Botticelli. His paintings are full of like symbolism and mythology.
Exactly. And then you have philosophers like Marsilio Ficino, who was translating and reinterpreting Plato for a new generation.
So it's like these ancient ideas were dormant for centuries and then bam, they come back to life and inspire a whole new era.
And it's not just the Renaissance either. The source material also mentions Alan Combs.
Alan Combs. Yeah, I've read some of his stuff. He's into like the history of ideas, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he argues that Neoplatonism has been this like great underground influence on Western thought.
So even when it wasn't like the dominant philosophy, it was still there lurking beneath the surface.
Right. It's like those underground rivers that suddenly spring forth as a vibrant spring, nourishing the landscape.
I love that analogy. Okay, so we're seeing this pattern repeat throughout history, but why does this stream resurface at certain times and not others?
That's a good question. And honestly, I don't know if there's a definitive answer, but I think it has something to do with like the right conditions being present,
The right conditions, like what?
Well, maybe it's a time of great upheaval, or maybe it's a time when people are really hungry for new ideas.
Right, like a fertile ground for those seeds to sprout.
Exactly. And maybe there are even like forces at work that we're not even aware of, guiding the flow of this stream.
Okay, that's getting a little bit out there, but I'm open to it. So what about those guardians? We were talking about them before, the Nagas.
Right, the Nagas. Yeah, they're fascinating. They're like these protectors of hidden knowledge, making sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands.
But who decides what the wrong hands are? I mean,
No.
that seems kind of subjective, right?
It is. And it raises all sorts of ethical questions about who gets to control knowledge and how it's used.
Right, because if this underground stream is all about like guiding humanity towards enlightenment, then why all the secrecy? Why not just share it with everyone?
Well, maybe some knowledge is just too dangerous for the unprepared mind.
Dangerous.
Well, think about it. If you gave a child a loaded gun, they might not understand the power of it. They might hurt themselves or someone else.
Okay, I see your point.
Yep.
So maybe this hidden knowledge is like that.
Yeah.
It needs to be handled with care.
And maybe it's not just about protecting people from the knowledge. Maybe it's about protecting the knowledge itself, from being corrupted or distorted.
Right, because if it falls into the wrong hands, it could be used for all sorts of nefarious purposes.
Exactly. So maybe this secrecy is a way of ensuring that the stream stays pure, that it doesn't get polluted.
Okay, that makes sense. But it still feels a little bit elitist, Like only a select few get to access this wisdom.
I hear you. And that's definitely a valid concern. But I think the source material is also suggesting that we all have a role to play in this,
How so?
Well, remember the idea of curating the underground stream.
Right, the author talked about how she's been doing that for decades.
Exactly. And she suggests that it's not just her. It's a collective effort. something that's been happening for centuries.
So it's like we're all caretakers of this stream, in a way.
Right. We each have a responsibility to engage with this knowledge, to interpret it, to share it with others.
And to protect it.
Yes, and to protect it.
Yeah.
It's a good point. So it's not just about finding those hidden wells of wisdom, but also about becoming guardians of those wells.
Mm,
Making sure they stay clear and accessible for those who seek their waters.
I like that. And it's not just about preserving the past either, right? It's about shaping the future.
Absolutely. We're not just passive recipients of this knowledge, we're active participants in its ongoing flow.
So what we do with this knowledge matters. It has the power to influence the course of history.
Exactly. And that's a pretty powerful thought, isn't it?
It is. It's a lot of responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also exciting. Like we're all part of something bigger than ourselves.
And that something is still unfolding.
Right. We don't know where this underground stream will lead us, but I think it's worth following.
Agreed. So let's keep diving deeper, shall we?
Oh.
Okay, so we've been talking about this underground stream of knowledge for a while now.
Yeah, we've gone pretty deep.
We have. We've talked about the water metaphors, the guardians, the hidden directorate even.
Right. And we've seen how this idea pops up in different times and places.
Exactly. But through it all, there's this one question that keeps coming back to me.
What's that?
Like, what's the point of it all? Why is this knowledge hidden? Why does it resurface at certain times?
That's the big question, isn't it? The ultimate mystery.
It is. And I don't know if there's like a single answer, but I think the source material gives us some clues.
Okay, so what are some of those clues?
Well, one possibility is that this underground stream is like a way of preserving knowledge.
Preserving it from what?
Well, from being lost,
Yeah.
Like in times of turmoil or persecution, certain ideas might have to go underground to survive.
Right. It's like those seeds that stay dormant for years waiting for the right conditions to sprout.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when the time is right, they burst forth and new life begins.
So it's like a safeguard protecting wisdom from being destroyed.
Right. And the source material actually gives us some examples of this.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, like the survival of those ancient Hermetic texts.
The Hermetica. Yeah, those were like lost for centuries and then rediscovered during the Renaissance.
Exactly. And they had a huge impact on like the revival of esoteric thought.
So it's like that knowledge was hidden for a reason, waiting for the right moment to reemerge.
Right. And maybe that's happening right now. Maybe there's knowledge that's been hidden for centuries that's about to resurface.
Okay, that's an interesting thought. But is it just about preservation, or is there something more going on?
Well, that's where it gets even more intriguing. Because the source material also suggests that this underground stream is like actively guiding humanity's evolution.
Guiding our evolution. How so?
Well, maybe there are certain truths that we're not ready for as a species.
Like we're not mature enough to handle them.
Exactly. It'd be like giving a child a loaded gun,
Right. They might not understand the consequences.
And maybe that's why this knowledge is hidden, to protect us from ourselves in a way.
Okay, but who decides when we're ready?
Well, that's where this idea of a hidden directorate comes back into play.
Right. Those mysterious figures pulling the strings.
Exactly. Maybe they're the ones who are like orchestrating these resurgences of knowledge.
So they're like the gatekeepers deciding what we get to know and when.
It's a possibility,
Mm.
but it raises all sorts of questions about like power and control.
Right, because who are they to decide what's best for us?
Exactly. And do we trust them?
That's a good question. Do we trust that they have our best interests at heart?
And I don't think there's an easy answer. But I do think it's worth asking these questions.
Agreed. So what's the takeaway here? What are we supposed to do with all this?
Well, I think the source material is encouraging us to like become more aware of this underground stream.
Aware of it. How?
Well, to start paying attention to the patterns,
Yeah.
the synchronicities,
Yeah.
the things that seem to pop up out of nowhere.
Okay, so like be more open to the possibility that there's more going on than we realize.
Exactly. And to trust our intuition,
Yeah.
that inner voice that tells us when something is true.
And to be discerning too, right?
Yeah.
Not all hidden knowledge is beneficial
That's a really important point. We have to be careful about what we embrace.
because some ideas can be dangerous.
Exactly. So it's a balancing act,
Yeah.
between staying open to new possibilities and also being critical of what we encounter.
Right. It's like navigating a river. You have to
Right.
be aware of the currents and the obstacles.
Exactly. And sometimes you have to go with the flow and sometimes you have to fight against it.
And through it all, we have to trust ourselves, that we can find our way.
I love that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with all this.
Yeah.
It's a mystery, but it's a mystery that I'm excited to keep exploring.
Me too. And I think that's what this whole underground stream idea is all about. It's about the journey.
The journey of discovery.
Exactly. And it's a journey that each of us has to take for ourselves.
So yeah, if you're listening and this resonates with you, I encourage you to do your own research.
Dive in.
Yeah, dive in. See where the stream takes you.
And who knows what treasures you might find along the way.
That's the beauty of it. It's an adventure.
And we're all in it together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.